Welcome to The Cantankerous Catholic with Joe Sixpack, the every Catholic guy. Listen to Joe tackle the really tough moral issues, current events, and politics from a Catholic perspective. Now here's Joe Sixpack, the every Catholic guy.
Hello, Sixpackers, and welcome to The Cantankerous Catholic, episode number 3, a story every Catholic needs to hear. Do you know and understand your Catholic faith? Do you really know it? Well, the reason I ask is because of an experience I had about 5 years ago, and we'll talk about that as soon as we come back.
Learn things about the Catholic faith you never knew in Joe Sixpack's Secrets of the Catholic Faith. There are many essentials to our holy and ancient faith that few modern Catholics know. Those essentials have become, well, secrets, hence the title Secrets of the Catholic Faith. Joe Sixpack, the every Catholic guy, is always exciting, never boring, and completely politically incorrect. He never shies away from the so-called untouchable moral issues. With his use of humor and directness, readers and students can never get enough of what he teaches. According to Joe, there isn't one single teaching of the Catholic Church that can't be completely demonstrated to an inquiring mind. Everything can be demonstrated. But the Catholic laity aren't being taught these things. They're being fed pablum when they need and want meat. Secrets of the Catholic Faith is actually exciting, and it will make any Catholic's chest swell with pride. So get your copy of Secrets of the Catholic Faith by Joe Sixpack, the every Catholic guy, today in print or ebook on Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo.
You know, I've been a Catholic for over 30 years, but I never bothered to join the Knights of Columbus until about 5 years ago. I was then, and still am, impressed with the Knights. I love my brother Knights, and I was impressed with them until I received my third degree. At my third degree initiation, the 50 or 60 of us present were told we were going to have to answer questions to demonstrate our proficiency in our knowledge of the Catholic faith. I was immediately overcome with the fear of being embarrassed because public questions I couldn't answer would make me look ignorant of all things Catholic. I had no doubt my brothers would show me up with their advanced knowledge of Catholicism. After all, they'd been Catholic all their lives. I was embarrassed, all right. I was embarrassed for all of my brothers. Out of the 50 or so men who were there, men who'd been Catholic all their lives, only one man besides myself could answer the questions asked. In fact, my brothers couldn't even tell what any of the rosary mysteries are or how many sacraments there are. I realized then that most Catholics neither know nor understand the teachings of the Catholic Church, the Church Christ established. Why is a complete knowledge of the Catholic faith so important? Well, there are lots of reasons. The first is the most obvious. You don't have a right to claim to be what you don't know anything about. Would you claim to be a surgeon if you don't know anything about performing surgery? Or would you claim to be an engineer if you don't know anything about engineering? Well, of course not. Then why on earth do you want to claim to be a Catholic if you don't know anything about Catholicism? That's dishonest. You might say, but Joe, I do know all about Catholicism. I've been a Catholic all my life. So, what does that mean? The men in the story I just told you have been Catholics all their lives too, but that didn't make them knowledgeable of Catholic teaching. Another reason you need to know the faith can be summed up in one word: confusion. The Church hasn't had a pope like Francis for hundreds of years, because we haven't had a heretic for a pope for hundreds of years. His heresies and plain neglect in teaching the faithful the constant 2,000-year teachings of the Church have caused the lay faithful and, sadly, many priests to live in confusion. They don't know what to think anymore about the issues that appear to be cut and dried before his pontificate. And when he's called out and criticized for his errors, he claims his critics are doing the work of Satan. But if the laity knew and understood the faith as they should, Francis and his fellow heretics he's promoted into the College of Cardinals wouldn't get away with the things they do and say. This podcast's primary purpose is to help listeners learn and know how to apply their Catholic faith to situations in their daily lives. But many of the things I say won't make any sense to listeners if they don't know and understand the faith. The very biggest reason why it's so important to know the faith is because Jesus died to establish it. He brought the church into being, gave the apostles all they needed to know, then gave us all a mandate to share and spread the faith in the Great Commission. To not know the faith, then, is to disrespect and deny Him. Look at it this way. Let's say you were in the military serving in a war zone. The enemy tosses a hand grenade into the squad you're out on patrol with. One of your fellow soldiers throws himself on that grenade to save you and the lives of your fellow soldiers. Obviously, the grenade blows that selfless soldier to bits, killing him instantly. He saved your life, but his wife and children will never see him again. When you get home from war, are you going to tell his family what an idiot he was and maybe visit his grave just so you can spit on his memory? Of course you wouldn't. You'd do all you could for his family. You'd promote his memory at every opportunity. This man is someone who you'd love and revere all the rest of your life. Then why won't you do that for Jesus? Jesus gave his life for you. Prior to his death, he established the Catholic Church, and he obliged all people to belong to the Church. He gave his teaching authority to the apostles, and by implication to their successors. He told us we had to accept all that he taught, and that failure to do so would result in eternal damnation in hell. Not bothering to learn all that Jesus taught is to spit on his memory. He gave everything for you, so you owe him. That's just simple justice. Frankly, despite my ranting about Catholics' lack of knowledge, I've got to tell you that not knowing what Jesus and his church teach really isn't your fault. Now, let me explain that. Modernism is a heresy that contends a person has freedom of conscience apart from any moral teaching of God and his church. In other words, if in your heart of hearts you believe there is nothing wrong with the thing you are doing, despite Catholic teaching to the contrary, then there is no sin. The reason this is a heresy that was condemned by Pope Pius X in 1907 is because the Church has always taught that a person's conscience must be formed in accordance to God's moral law. Paul teaches in Hebrews 13:8 that God is perfect, so he can't change, that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. You see, if a perfect thing could change, then that would mean it wasn't perfect in the first place. Since God is the very definition of perfection, he can't change. Therefore, his moral laws can't change. After Pius X condemned modernism, the modernists didn't cease being modernists. Not at all. They simply went underground and stayed silent while passing their heresy on to new disciples that they cultivated and recruited, while waiting for their opportunity to come up out of the darkness and wreak havoc. That opportunity came with Vatican II. After every one of the Church's ecumenical councils, there has historically been a 20-year period of confusion brought on by people's misinterpretation of the council's work. NeoModernism took advantage of this traditional period of confusion to raise its ugly, heretical head. Vatican II was a good and holy council. Don't ever let anybody tell you that it wasn't. I know. I've read all the documents, and I recommend you do too. So the problems we have in the Church today aren't because of the council, but because of neo-modernism. Taking advantage of the anticipated historical confusion, the neo-modernists infiltrated the chancery offices of almost every diocese in the world to begin their attempt to destroy the Church from within. Once the neo-modernists were in control of the decision-making offices in the chanceries and had deceptively gained their bishops' trust, they began introducing all sorts of novelties to water down the faith. For example, the council never instituted the destruction of altar rails or receiving communion in the hand or while standing. The neo-modernists did that. On a catechetical level, they introduced the heresies of situation ethics, fundamental option, and moral relativism. They dumbed down the texts and methods for teaching the truths of the faith. Now, over 50 years later, we've had generations of Catholics who were never taught the purity and totality of the Catholic faith. So that's why it's not your fault you don't know the faith you profess. It's not your fault, but the fault of modern-day Judas Iscariots who want to destroy the church Jesus gave his life to establish for our salvation. Okay, so we've established that it's not your fault that you really don't know the faith the way you should, but that doesn't let you off the hook either. I'm pretty certain that while I told the story of my Knights of Columbus third-degree experience, you probably began to realize how little you actually know about the faith. Well, what are you going to do about it? I could recommend some books, but chances are they'll just sit on the shelf collecting dust. I'm fairly certain a lot of you will buy them if I recommend them at this point, but the thought of reading a book that may be boring is not something most people are willing to do. I could suggest you ask your priest to teach you what you should have been taught before now, but that presents a whole new set of difficulties. Assuming your priest can find a time slot for such a thing, which is pretty unlikely, life gets in the way. It wouldn't be long before arranging to attend weekly classes on a weeknight would fall by the wayside. So what can you do? Well, I've got a painless solution for you, and it won't cost you a dime or intrude on your busy weeknights. Right after this podcast, visit joesixpackanswers.com. You'll see a form in the sidebar. Just enter your name and email. You'll begin getting course lessons in your inbox every 3 days for free. Not only can you read these short lessons at your leisure, but if you have a question, you can ask it by replying to that email. I'll answer it as quickly as I can, usually within 48 hours. The email course isn't the only freebie you'll get. You'll begin to receive personalized invitations to free weekly webinars I host called Sharing the Catholic Faith. These webinars are always on Sunday evenings when people are usually their least busy. And it doesn't matter when you start in this webinar series, because when the series is complete, I start all over again. And I do this for 2 reasons. First, new webinar attendees are coming in all the time, and I don't want them to miss anything. If they begin in the middle of the series, all they have to do is keep attending until the series gets back to where they started. The second reason I perpetually run this series is because the very best teacher there is repetition. Obviously, then, I'm hoping you'll keep registering for each webinar until you've been through the series several times. That's the best way to learn. Another great thing about these webinars is you'll be able to actually ask me any question you may have about the lesson or anything else of a Catholic nature for that matter. I have a question period at the end of each presentation, and these question periods are often lively, very much so in fact. Perhaps the best thing about these webinars is that there is absolutely nothing boring about them. I've been teaching the faith for 30 years. Not once have I had anyone yawn when I teach. The reason why people never get bored is because I get excited when I teach, and excitement is contagious. In fact, one man emailed me after his first webinar. He told me that he couldn't believe it when we got to the question period that an hour had gone by. He said the webinar was so interesting and so exciting that he thought only about 20 minutes had gone by. Anyone teaching the faith can teach you what the church believes, but I also teach why we believe them. I don't just mindlessly teach the church's doctrines. I certainly teach them, but I also teach why the church teaches them, the reasons why they're true. In the particular webinar the man had attended where he thought it was only 20 minutes long, I proved that God exists. I actually proved that. In other webinars, I proved things like why we call Mary the Mother of God, that Jesus founded the Catholic Church, that Peter was our first pope, that Jesus is really and truly present in the Holy Eucharist, and the existence of purgatory, as well as a whole lot more. I not only teach what the Church says is right and wrong in Catholic morality, but I teach why a thing is right or wrong. For example, I don't just teach that homosexual behavior is wrong, but I teach why it's wrong, without just quoting a bunch of Bible verses. Bottom line, you won't be bored. Furthermore, I can guarantee that no matter how much you know about the Catholic faith, you will come away knowing something new, something you never knew before. The next obvious question you might ask is, what on earth qualifies Joe Sixpack, the Every Catholic Guy, to teach anyone about the Catholic faith? Well, that's a good question, and you got a right to get an answer. After all, you don't know me, and you want to be sure you're getting the best orthodoxy the church has to offer. I really don't like talking about this because it makes me sound like I'm bragging, but you have a right to my bona fides. To begin, I'm an adult convert. I'm as excited about the Catholic faith today as I was when I became a Catholic over 30 years ago. In fact, I think Catholicism is the most exciting lived experience anyone can possibly have. Beginning when I was a catechumen, I began sharing the faith with others. The Holy Spirit has used me since then to make hundreds of converts over the last 30 years in one-on-one and small group venues. 84 of those converts are my adult godchildren. I'm also a consecrated member of the Marian Catechist Apostolate. Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke is the international director of the Marian Catechist Apostolate, and he's a friend of mine. In order to become a Marian catechist, there is a series of very detailed and very stringent courses I had to go through. These courses were developed by the late Father John Hardin, who was the best theologian in the church until his death in 2000, and a personal friend of St. John Paul II. In fact, he was one of only 5 people in the world who could go to the Vatican unannounced and get a private audience with the Pope. Finally, I have 5 books in print about the Catholic faith that have been endorsed by Cardinal Burke and other bishops and priests. These well-known and popular men are known for their orthodoxy, so they won't let their names be used for anything that isn't 100% orthodox. So these are my bona fides. They guarantee you that you'll only get the best the church has to offer. So go forward with this. Go to joesixpackanswers.com and sign up. I would love to develop a friendship with you in helping you learn and understand the Catholic faith and how to live it in your life.
Joe Sixpack, the Every Catholic Guy, is a welcome visitor to parishes across the United States every Sunday through his What We Believe, Why We Believe It bulletin inserts. Using humor, immutable truth, and ignoring political correctness, Joe Sixpack helps the average Catholic in the pew better know and understand our holy and ancient faith in a way that is refreshing, awe-inspiring, and makes readers chest-pounding proud to be Catholic. And readers love it. Now you can enjoy Joe's work by getting the best of What We Believe, Why We Believe It book series. In fact, get 2 copies of each book, one for yourself and one for your pastor. Then your priest can decide if he wants to help your fellow parishioners by subscribing to the What We Believe, Why We Believe It bulletin inserts. Get your copy of The Best of What We Believe, Why We Believe It by Joe Sixpack, the Every Catholic Guy, today in print or ebook on Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo.
Only a fool believes the Catholic Church isn't in shambles. Christ's church is full of scandal. Our current pontiff is in blatant heresy, and the laity live in a perpetual state of confusion. But there's hope. There are still a handful of bishops we can count on for orthodox leadership, priests who love and work for souls, and laity-led apostolates that serve divinely revealed truth in every way imaginable. We want to do a great service for you by telling you about them in every episode. So here's today's Catholic contribution. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to responding to the mandate of Jesus to preach the gospel to all nations by taking the Catholic faith to the streets. Christ's call to evangelize was made to every Catholic, and the Second Vatican Council reiterated this need, urging each of the baptized to bring the gospel, found fully in the Catholic Church, to a culture that has largely reverted to paganism. As an on-the-street Catholic organization, St. Paul Street Evangelization provides an avenue for people to share the person of Jesus Christ and the truth and beauty of the Catholic faith with a hungry culture. Founded in 2012, St. Paul Street Evangelization provides the tools and resources for Catholics to engage the culture in a simple, non-confrontational method of evangelization which involves making themselves available available to the public to answer questions about the faith and to pray with those who request it. St. Paul Street Evangelization has had tremendous growth and now has teams throughout the United States and internationally in the Philippines and Australia. I urge you to visit streetevangelization.com today. I'll see you next time, Sixpackers. And remember, comfort and conviction don't live on the same block.
This has been The Cantankerous Catholic with Joe Sixpack, the Every Catholic Guy. Thanks for subscribing, and be sure to visit cantankerouscatholic.com to get your free copy of Joe's popular book, The Best of What We Believe, Why We Believe It.